The boardroom reeked of expensive leather and worse judgment. Kenneth Walsh stood at the head of the table, cradling my prototype like a trophy he'd already claimed. This tech is mine now. 5 words, spoken with the kind of certainty only men who've never once heard no can manage. His fingers traced the edge of the neural processing unit, the device that held 3 years of my life compressed into 8 pounds of groundbreaking engineering. Kenneth, we need to discuss the licensing terms. There are no terms. He set the prototype down with exaggerated care. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Security will escort you out. The technology was developed on company time with company resources, which makes it company property. The other executives at the table wouldn't meet my eyes. 7 people who had sat through every development meeting, every breakthrough demo, every late-night crisis when the whole project nearly fell apart. Now they studied their phones, their paperwork, the grain of the mahogany, anything at all besides the person being erased from the room. You're making a mistake. My voice held steady even as adrenaline flooded my system. Kenneth's smile was the kind sharks would probably envy. The only mistake was letting you think you had any ownership of this project. You were an employee. Employees are replaceable. My phone was already in my hand, already unlocked to the secure app I'd hoped I'd never actually need. 3 taps. 1 confirmation. The geographic lock engaged with a silent ping nobody else in that room could see or hear. All right. The words came out level, almost pleasant. If that's your decision. He hadn't expected agreement. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, then suspicion, then dismissal. Security is waiting outside. One thing before I go. My thumb hovered above one last button. As the global patent holder for the core neural processing architecture in that prototype, I should let you know that your entire production line just became illegal. Kenneth's laugh came out sharp. Nice try. Company IP policy clearly states. The screens along the boardroom wall lit up, displaying the patent filing I'd submitted 18 months earlier in Geneva. Not for the finished prototype, for the fundamental neural processing architecture that made everything else possible. International Patent W02321084721. Inventor and sole rights holder, Ilara Novak. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying a story about protecting your own work and standing up to corporate theft, think about subscribing. We just crossed our first milestone and we're climbing toward 2,000 subscribers, and your support is what keeps these stories coming. Now let me back up and tell you how we got here. My name is Ilara Novak, and until 17 minutes earlier, I had been Chief Technology Officer at Neural Edge Industries. The title sounded impressive, but the truth underneath it was much simpler. I was the person who had invented the very technology Kenneth Walsh had just tried to steal. My father spent 40 years as a machinist, working plants across the Midwest, coming home every night with oil under his fingernails and pride in every piece he'd shaped. My mother taught elementary school in districts too broke for basic supplies, buying markers and paper out of her own pocket because she couldn't stand watching kids go without. They taught me that making something meaningful mattered more than profiting off it. But they also taught me something just as important. Never let anyone take credit for work your own hands built. That was never about money or status. It was about understanding that every person's effort has real value, that empathy means recognizing that effort, and that humility should never mean letting somebody steal what you made. I earned a doctorate in computational neuroscience from MIT, and already held 4 patents in machine learning architecture before Kenneth Walsh ever came calling with an offer that seemed too good to turn down. For 3 years we built, and somewhere across those endless nights of coding and testing, we created something genuinely revolutionary. A neural processing unit capable of interfacing with existing AI systems and boosting their efficiency by 340%. $750 million. That's the number Goldman Sachs put on the technology. A conservative estimate. Kenneth had seen those figures. And apparently he'd also seen an opening. 6 months before that boardroom confrontation, the warning signs had already started surfacing. Kenneth showing up to more development meetings, asking pointed questions about the architecture. His VP of legal requesting copies of every piece of project documentation. Casual remarks about making sure the company's IP stayed properly protected. I should have seen it coming. Maybe some part of me did. 3 months earlier I'd filed the international patent, not for the complete system since that genuinely was collaborative work, but for the core processing architecture, the fundamental innovation that made everything else possible. That piece belonged to me alone, developed before I ever joined Neural Edge, refined on my own time using my own equipment. The filing was strategic, submitted through the World Intellectual Property Organization, establishing priority across 153 countries simultaneously. Then I built a geographic lock into the prototype's operating system, a kill switch that could restrict the technology's function based on patent law. Insurance, I told myself. Just in case. Kenneth made his move that morning. The meeting invite hit my inbox at 7 a.m. Strategic realignment discussion, mandatory attendance.
No agenda, no contexto.
7 executives were already seated by the time I walked in. The prototype sat at the center of the table like evidence at a trial. Alara, thank you for joining us. Kenneth's voice carried the false warmth that always precedes bad news. We've been reviewing the neural processing project, and we have concerns about development pace and resource allocation. The project is on schedule, I answered, measured. We're 3 weeks from beta testing. That timeline is no longer viable. Christine Morrison, his VP of Legal, slid a folder across the table. We've decided to restructure the development team under new leadership. Inside sat my termination papers effective that instant. Severance calculated down to the legal minimum, a non-compete clause that would have locked me out of the field for 3 years. This is theft. My words came out quiet but clear. You're firing me to dodge the equity payout once the technology launches. That's when he lifted the prototype off the table, when he spoke those 5 words that set everything else in motion. The security guards were courteous about the escort. My office sat on the 4th floor. 3 years of work folded down into one box of personal belongings, my laptop and external drive, the photo of my parents at my MIT graduation. My phone buzzed the entire time I packed. Messages from teammates who'd already heard. Derek, what the hell is happening? They're saying you're fired. Samantha, this is insane. The project was your vision. Oliver, legal is telling us not to communicate with you. I'm using my personal phone. What do you need? I typed back. Don't risk your jobs. I've got this handled. Trust me. The parking garage sat dim and quiet. I stayed in my car without starting the engine, staring at the secure app glowing on my phone. The geographic lock confirmation still lit up. The patent filing, the leverage Kenneth had no idea I was holding. I called my father. Alara, hang on, let me step outside. Machinery noise faded into the background. What's wrong? I got fired today. They're trying to take the technology. Kenneth's claiming it all belongs to the company. Silence then. Did you protect yourself? I have the international patent on the core architecture, and I just activated a geographic lock. Their production line is illegal now across 153 countries. A low whistle. Alara, that's nuclear. Dad, he stood right there and told me the technology was his. 3 years of my life and he just claimed it. You're not nothing. His voice carried absolute certainty. You built something revolutionary. Don't let some corporate thief make you forget that. After we hung up, I called Jennifer Wu, a patent attorney my mother had recommended. Former IBM counsel, known for winning cases everyone else called hopeless. I read your paper on adaptive architecture last year, Jennifer said once I'd explained the situation. Brilliant work. Can you be at my office in 40 minutes? Jennifer Wu's office looked exactly like you'd expect from a top-tier patent attorney. Shelves of intellectual property law, framed patents lining the walls, photographs beside tech founders and inventors. She was in her mid-40s, sharply dressed, radiating a focus that demanded attention. Show me everything. I walked her through all of it, the original architecture sketches from before I joined Neural Edge, the patent filing and its approval, my employment contract, the termination papers, the technical documentation showing exactly how the core architecture made everything else function. Jennifer took notes, asking questions that cut straight toward the complications ahead. The geographic lock. Explain how it works. The prototype's operating system checks its own location by GPS. It cross-references that against my patent database. If it's sitting in a jurisdiction where I hold patent priority, the system demands licensing verification. Without valid licensing, the core functions get restricted. Restricted or disabled. Restricted. Basic functions still run, but the efficiency gains, the entire reason it's valuable, stay locked. It turns into a very expensive paperweight. Jennifer's smile turned sharp. That's elegant. Neural Edge will call it sabotage, but you're simply preventing patent infringement, which is your legal right. She laid out the battle ahead. Kenneth has resources, legal teams, connections. This is going to get ugly. He'll paint you as a disgruntled employee holding the company hostage. Let him. He tried to steal my work. Jennifer studied me for a moment, then nodded. If we're doing this, we do it all the way. Hourly rate plus expenses. It won't be cheap. 100,000 minimum. Possibly double if this goes to trial. I thought about my savings. About the equity Kenneth had just stolen. Do it. We spent 3 hours building the case. Jennifer recorded my statement, mapped the full timeline, prepared the filings. Why didn't you disclose the patent to Neural Edge once it was approved? Because Kenneth has a reputation. 3 previous CTOs left under murky circumstances. Every one of them without equity despite promises made. The patent was insurance. Smart insurance. Jennifer shut her laptop. Here's what happens next. I file a declaratory judgment tomorrow. Send a cease and desist to Neural Edge. They'll come back aggressive. This escalates fast. The cease and desist landed at Neural Edge by 9 the next morning. By 11, Kenneth had called an emergency press conference. I watched the live stream from my apartment as he stood before the cameras, his expression tuned perfectly to convey wounded integrity. Yesterday, we terminated an employee due to performance concerns. Today, that individual is attempting to extort this company by sabotaging technology developed under our employment. His voice rang with conviction. Neural Edge will vigorously defend our rights against this baseless claim. A reporter called out, Mr. Walsh, can you confirm the technology is currently non-functional? Kenneth's jaw tightened. We're experiencing minor technical issues. Production timeline remains unchanged. Lies. The geographic lock was anything but minor. And his team couldn't crack it without the core architecture in hand. Jennifer texted. He's panicking. Good. Don't respond to press. Derek, my former team lead, messaged. Factory shutdown confirmed. Everything dead. Kenneth losing his mind. They're offering bonuses if we can crack your lock. Don't. You'll be violating patent law. Already told the team. Your work, your rights. The next 48 hours blurred into legal filings and strategy sessions. Kenneth brought in Whitmore and Associates, one of Boston's most aggressive firms. Their opening move was an emergency injunction demanding I remove the geographic lock. Jennifer had already seen it coming. Our counterfiling included documentation of Kenneth's own words. This tech is mine now, captured by the boardroom's own transcription software, proof of wrongful termination, and a timeline establishing that the patent predated the employment contract entirely. The emergency hearing landed that Thursday before Judge Martha Brennan, a woman in her 60s known for no-nonsense efficiency and zero patience for corporate theater. Kenneth's attorney, Thomas Whitmore, radiated silver-haired confidence in an expensive suit. Your Honor, this is straightforward employee sabotage. Miss Novak was terminated for legitimate reasons. In retaliation, she activated a kill switch on company property. We seek immediate injunctive relief. Judge Brennan turned to Jennifer. Miss Wu. Your Honor, this is patent protection, not sabotage. Miss Novak holds an international patent covering the core architecture. Neural Edge attempted to seize ownership by terminating Miss Novak and declaring the technology company property. The geographic lock exists to prevent patent infringement, which is Miss Novak's legal right. Whitmore cut in. The employment contract clearly states all work product belongs to Neural Edge. Jennifer slid documents toward the bench. The patent application includes dated records showing the core architecture was developed before Miss Novak's employment began. The contract can't retroactively claim rights over pre-existing intellectual property. Judge Brennan read carefully. The courtroom stayed silent except for the rustle of paper. Finally she looked up. Mr. Whitmore, does your client dispute the patent filing date? Whitmore hesitated. No, Your Honor, but then Miss Novak has valid patent rights. Judge Brennan's tone sharpened. You're asking me to force the patent holder to enable infringement of her own intellectual property. That is not how patent law works. Your Honor, Neural Edge has invested millions. Ms. Novak's actions are causing irreparable harm. Did your client attempt to negotiate a licensing agreement before this dispute? Silence. Did your client acknowledge Ms. Novak's patent rights and seek terms for using the protected architecture? More silence. Judge Brennan closed the folder. Motion for emergency injunction is denied. If Neural Edge wishes to use technology incorporating Ms. Novak's patented architecture, they can negotiate a licensing agreement. This court will not compel patent infringement. The gavel came down. Kenneth's face cycled through several shades of red. Whitmore requested an expedited hearing on the underlying employment dispute. File your motions, Judge Brennan said. But the injunction is denied. Ms. Wu, I assume your client is willing to negotiate licensing in good faith. Jennifer stood. Absolutely, Your Honor. However, any arrangement must address the wrongful termination and attempted IP theft. That's for settlement discussions.
I'm ordering mediation.
First session within 2 weeks. Outside, Jennifer's smile was pure satisfaction. That went better than expected. She basically told them to settle. She told them they can't force you to enable patent infringement. Kenneth has 2 choices. Negotiate with you or walk away from $750 million in technology. What do I want out of this? That was the real question. I worked through it in my head. Patent rights confirmed. Proper licensing terms with ongoing royalties. Equity stake restored and paid out. Jennifer made notes. Be ready for this to get nasty. Kenneth will try to discredit you. The smear campaign started that same afternoon. Anonymous sources in tech blogs claiming I've been difficult. Missed deadlines shown concerning behavior. TechCrunch. Sources suggest terminated CTO had pattern of erratic behavior. Industry Insider. Questions raised about Alara Novak's contributions. I ignored every headline. Jennifer had been clear. No public statements.
No interviews.
Let the legal case speak for itself. But Derek texted, everyone on the development team knows the truth. We're documenting statements about who actually led this project. Oliver, HR is pressuring us to sign statements saying you were problematic. Nobody's signing. Samantha, they offered me your old job. I told them to shove it. These people were risking their own careers on principle alone. The court-appointed mediator was retired Judge Leonard Kozlov, known for cracking impossible cases through the strategic application of reality. The first mediation session landed the following Tuesday. Both legal teams, both principals, 6 hours set aside to see if settlement was even possible. We sat in separate rooms while Kozlov shuttled between us, ferrying offers and counteroffers. On his first visit, Neural Edge is offering $2 million for full patent assignment and release of all claims. Jennifer didn't even look up. No. That's your entire response? Judge Kozlov, the technology is valued at $750 million. My client holds the core patent. $2 million is insulting. What's your counter? Patent rights remain with Ms. Novak. Neural Edge receives an exclusive license for 10 years with 8% annual royalties on gross revenue. Ms. Novak's equity stake restored and paid out at current valuation. An additional $5 million for wrongful termination. Kozlov wrote it down. They're going to say that's unreasonable. Then they can explain to shareholders why they're walking away from $750 million because they tried to steal it and failed. The back and forth dragged on for hours. Each offer inched slightly higher but never came close to reasonable. Kenneth was playing a war of attrition. His final offer that day, $15 million for patent assignment, 4% royalties for 7 years, half the equity restored. He's moving, Jennifer noted, but not enough. Tell him no. Kozlov returned looking worn down. Miss Novak, Mr. Walsh asked me to remind you that litigation is expensive and uncertain. He can outspend you 10 to 1. Judge Kozlov, please tell Mr. Walsh that I grew up watching my father work with his hands for 40 years, and my mother spent her own money on school supplies for kids who had nothing. I understand the value of work. I understand fairness. And I understand that some things matter more than money. He won't like that answer. I don't need him to like it. The mediation ended without a deal. A second session was set for 3 weeks out. Outside, Jennifer stayed quiet until we reached her car. You did good. Kenneth's used to people folding. You didn't. What's my walkaway point? $20 million for patent assignment, or keep the patent and license it exclusively at 6% royalties for the life of any products using the architecture. Full equity stake restored and paid out. $10 million for wrongful termination and reputation damage. Jennifer let out a whistle. That's aggressive. That's fair. The technology is worth $750 million. I'm asking for less than 5% of it. Kenneth pays his investment bankers more than that. He'll never agree. Then we go to trial and I win because the patent is clear, the theft is documented, and his own boardroom recorded him claiming my invention out loud. The second mediation, 3 weeks later, opened with an entirely different energy. Kenneth looked like sleep had become a stranger to him. Kozlov's first visit that day carried an actual offer. Patent assignment for $25 million. Equity stake fully restored, paid at current valuation plus a 20% premium, $5 million for termination settlement, an NDA covering all parties. Jennifer's eyes met mine. This was Kenneth blinking first. What about the reputation damage, the smear campaign? Kozlov nodded. A joint statement clarifying the termination was mutual. Recognizing your contributions, wishing you well. Not good enough. Kenneth called this sabotage and extortion in public. I want a public statement acknowledging the patent rights were valid, and that the dispute arose from a good faith disagreement over IP ownership. After more back and forth, they agreed to the statement with modified language. One more thing, I said. I want the option to buy back the patent after 5 years at a predetermined price. If Neural Edge hasn't brought a product to market, or abandons the technology, ownership reverts to me. Kozlov raised his eyebrows. That's unusual. The technology matters to me beyond the money. I don't want it shelved. If they're actually going to use it, fine. But if not, it comes back to me. After a long deliberation, Kozlov returned. They'll agree to reversion if the technology is abandoned or no product reaches market within 3 years. Buyback price $20 million. Deal. The settlement paperwork arrived that Wednesday, 37 pages of legal language. I read every word twice before signing. The signing meeting itself was brief. Kenneth and I sat across from each other one final time, lawyers flanking us both. He signed first, all sharp angles and heavy ink. I signed second, my cursive flowing easily across the line. Thomas Whitmore collected the documents. This settlement is binding. Funds transfer within 3 business days. Kenneth stood without a word. At the doorway he paused. You could have had a real future at Neural Edge if you'd just been reasonable. The nerve of it was almost impressive. Kenneth, you tried to steal my work. I protected it. The only person who wasn't reasonable here was you. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He just walked out. The fund transfer landed that Friday, $30 million. The equity payout followed Tuesday, $18 million more. $48 million total. Didn't feel like winning. It felt like compensation for something stolen and only partially given back. 3 months after the settlement, I incorporated Novak Neural Systems. Not in competition with Neural Edge, I'd licensed them exclusively, but other applications still existed. Medical uses, educational tools, accessibility technology. Everything Kenneth had once waved off as not profitable enough became our entire mission. I hired Derek as head of development, Samantha as VP of operations, Oliver as lead architect, the same team that had built the original prototype, now free to build something new. Funding came from venture firms who had watched the settlement unfold and understood exactly what it meant. We closed our Series A at $80 million. A year later, Neural Edge finally brought their product to market. Strong reviews. Sales beat projections. My royalty check for that first year alone came to $12 million. Kenneth had called my patent protection sabotage. Turned out to just be good business. 2 years after the settlement, I got an email from Christine Morrison, Kenneth's former VP of legal. I hope this finds you well. I've recently left Neural Edge and wanted to reach out. I was part of the legal team that tried to claim ownership of your patent, and I've regretted my role ever since. Watching you fight taught me something about integrity and IP law that I'd lost somewhere in corporate practice. I'm now working with a nonprofit helping independent inventors protect their work. Your case has become a teaching example in patent law courses. Thank you for not backing down. Christine. I wrote back offering to help with expert testimony and case studies for protecting independent inventors. That exchange grew into a pro bono program. Novak Neural Systems began offering patent support to independent inventors who couldn't afford traditional legal protection. Jennifer Wu came on as a consultant. In its first year alone, the program helped 47 inventors, Small interventions that kept people from losing their life's work. Kenneth's path went a different direction. Neural Edge's board forced him out 18 months later, claiming he'd mismanaged company IP and exposed them to unnecessary legal risk. He landed at another company within months because men like Kenneth always do. But his reputation had shifted. The industry knew what he'd tried, knew he'd lost. Talented people stopped answering his recruiting calls. I ran into him once 3 years after the settlement, at a conference in San Francisco. We were both speaking, him on scaling tech companies, me on protecting inventor rights. Alara. He stopped me in the hallway. I saw your talk. It was good. Thank you. An awkward silence sat between us, full of everything unsaid about the boardroom, the prototype, the fight. I should have handled things differently, he said. The termination, the IP situation. Not quite an apology. More of an acknowledgement. You should have, but you didn't, and here we are. Your company is doing well. The medical applications. Impressive work. It's work that matters. That's what I care about. He nodded with something that almost resembled respect. For what it's worth, I've learned from what happened between us. Good. Make sure you keep learning. I walked away before he had the chance to answer. 5 years after Kenneth claimed my technology as his own, I stood in the patent office in Geneva, accepting an award for innovation in neural processing architecture. My parents sat in the audience. My father, retired now, still carried a machinist's hands. My mother, still teaching part-time because she couldn't imagine stopping, beamed with pride. Derek, Samantha, and Oliver sat in the front row. They'd built their own success by then, but flew across the world just to be there. Jennifer Wu was there too, having become not just my attorney but a genuine friend. The speech I gave was short. This award recognizes a patent I had to fight to protect. It represents not just innovation, but the principle that people who create something deserve to own it. Too many brilliant minds lose their work to corporate structures that value profit over people. If this accomplishes anything, I hope it encourages other innovators to protect their work, know their rights, and stand up to anyone who tries to claim credit for what they built. Thank you. The evening ended over dinner overlooking Lake Geneva. No fancy speeches, just good food and better company. What's next? Derek asked. You've conquered the patent world, built a successful company, changed an industry. What's the next mountain? More of the same. Better applications, better protections, better systems that make it harder for people like Kenneth to steal from people like us. That's going to take a while. Good thing I'm not going anywhere. My phone buzzed. A royalty payment from Neural Edge for the fourth quarter. $8.3 million. 5 years of payments now, and no sign of slowing down. Kenneth had tried to take everything. Instead, he'd handed me the foundation to build something bigger than either of us had ever imagined. The geographic lock I'd triggered that day had become symbolic. Boundaries matter. Rights matter. Protecting your work isn't sabotage, it's survival. And sometimes, when you plant your feet against someone who thinks they can take what's yours, you don't just survive. You build something that lasts. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to fight to protect your own work, or if you believe innovation deserves respect and fair compensation, subscribe to this channel. We're building toward 2,000 subscribers, creating a community that values creators over corporations, substance over theft. Your subscription helps us keep telling these stories. Thank you for being here.